My name is Sarah, and I want to share what happened to me. I had been with my partner for 7 years. We had a comfortable life, or at least that's what I thought, until everything came crashing down. My partner had this close female friend, someone who he said just understood him in a way no one else could. At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted him. But as time went by, I started to notice things. Little things that didn't add up, things that started to eat away at me and made me question everything. I wanted to believe the best, but it became harder and harder to ignore. One day, I found out that this close female friend had been sending him nudes, sexts, and even begging him for sex. And he was reciprocating. It was like a punch to the gut, something I couldn't even wrap my head around at first. I wouldn't have minded as much if she were single, but the problem was that she was married. Her husband had no idea about any of this. She would lie to him, telling him she was going on work trips or visiting friends, but in reality, she was meeting my partner. They were staying in hotels together, spending entire weekends with each other, booking different hotels each time so nothing would look suspicious. They had been doing this for months, lying to my face, pretending everything was normal, while I quietly collected every piece of evidence I could. I took screenshots of everything I found on his phone, every message, every photo, every hotel confirmation. I thought about confronting my partner for days. I replayed every possible scenario in my head, over and over again. Should I scream at him, demand answers? Should I stay calm and ask for an explanation? Should I cry and beg him to tell me the truth? When I finally gathered the courage to confront him, I was shaking, my voice barely steady. I laid everything out in front of him. I showed him the screenshots, the messages, the photos, the proof of all the things they had been doing behind my back. The conversations, the lies, the betrayal. I told him I knew everything. Despite all the hurt, part of me was still willing to forgive him. I told him as much. I told him that if he would just give her up, if he would choose me over her, we could work things out. It was foolish, I know that now, but I was desperate. I wanted to believe that the man I loved, the man I had built my life with, would see what he was throwing away. I loved him, and part of me still wanted to fight for what we had, no matter how shattered it felt. But he refused. He looked me straight in the eyes, and without hesitation, he told me that he loved her more than he loved me. His words were like a knife, each one cutting deeper than the last. He said he still wanted both of us, that I fulfilled a part of him, but she fulfilled another. He claimed that we each brought something different to his life, something he wasn't ready to let go of. He talked about how I was his comfort, his stability, the person who understood his day-to-day needs, who kept him grounded. And then he spoke about her, how she was his passion, his excitement, the one who brought him a thrill he didn't want to lose. He wanted the best of both worlds, and he didn't care what it did to me. He said it like it was the most logical thing in the world, like I should understand, accept it, and continue on as if nothing had changed. As those words left his mouth, I knew I had to prepare myself for a life without him. The realization hit me all at once. There was no repairing this, no coming back from where we were now. I felt a mixture of heartbreak, betrayal, and disbelief. The man I had trusted, the man I had loved deeply and built my life around, was telling me I wasn't enough. It was like everything I believed in, everything I thought was real, was a lie. The ground beneath my feet vanished, and I was free falling into darkness. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. He was making a choice, and that choice wasn't me. He wanted her too, and he expected me to be okay with that, to share him, to accept that I alone wasn't enough. I remember staring at him, my eyes welling up with tears, my throat tightening as I fought to keep my composure. I wanted to scream at him, to hit him, to make him feel just a fraction of the pain he was causing me. I wanted him to hurt like I was hurting, but I couldn't. I knew that if I broke down in front of him, if I let him see how deeply his words had hurt me, it would only give him more power over me. He had already taken so much from me, my trust, my love, my sense of safety. I wasn't going to let him see me fall apart. I had to be strong, even if it was just a facade. So I swallowed my pain and forced myself to nod, to act like I understood, like I was okay with his twisted logic. I pretended that I could accept his decision, even though every part of me was breaking. I let him renew the lease on our house, pretending like everything was fine, while inside, I was dying. I knew I needed time to figure out my finances, to gather my strength, to make sure I wouldn't end up homeless and completely broken. I had to play the long game. I had to pretend that I was still invested in this relationship, while every day I was planning my exit. I knew I couldn't just leave without a plan. I had to make sure I was ready. In those dark days, I realized I couldn't leave quietly. I couldn't just walk away and let them continue on with their lives without facing the consequences of what they had done. I was going to expose her for who she really was. She had lied to my face, manipulated her husband, and destroyed my relationship. She deserved to face the consequences of her actions, and I was going to make sure that happened. I would wait until the time was right, until I was ready, and then I would bring her down, not just for me, but for everyone she had hurt along the way. It was the only thing that kept me going during those dark days. The thought that one day she would get what she deserved, and I would be the one to deliver it. It gave me purpose, a reason to keep going when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I had lost so much, but I wasn't going to lose myself. Not to him, and not to her. I knew where she lived. She lived with her husband's family in a house that her in-laws owned. It was a large, old house that had been in their family for generations, and I could picture it vividly because I had seen the address many times. My partner had bought her sex toys from Amazon, and the shipping address was there for me to see. Plain as day. It made me sick to think about it. I could imagine her sneaking those packages into the house, hiding them from her husband and his family, knowing that her secret life was just a few clicks away from being discovered. The kicker was that she was only able to stay in the country because she was married to him. She had even admitted to my partner that she was using her husband just for the visa. She had no real intention of staying with him once she secured her permanent residency. Her plan was to divorce him and then be with my partner, as if she could simply trade one life for another without any consequences. She had no regard for the man she married or his family, who had welcomed her into their home and their lives. She was using them, lying to them, and betraying them, all while playing the part of the loving wife. If I exposed her, it would be over for her. Her husband would be devastated, but I knew he would divorce her. And without him, she would lose everything: the stability, the family, the home, and most importantly, her right to stay in the country. She would have to leave, forced out for at least 6 months to a year, and then try to come back on a visa that she couldn't afford. Her husband had been funding everything: her expenses, her lifestyle, her dreams of staying here. Without him, she was nothing. She would be sent back to her home country, a conservative Muslim country where her parents were strict and traditional. They would disown her if they found out what she had done. In their eyes, she would be a disgrace to the family, someone who had abandoned her values and brought shame upon them. It felt like betrayal ran in her family, as her father was also cheating on her mother. The hypocrisy of it all made me angry. Her father, the man who was supposed to be a role model, was sneaking around behind his wife's back, and now his daughter was doing the same thing. It was like a cycle that no one in that family could break. They were all so willing to lie, to deceive, to hurt the people who loved them. And here she was, dragging my partner into their mess, pulling him into her web of lies and betrayal. I honestly wouldn't have considered doing any of this if she hadn't lied to my face. When I confronted her, she cried, putting on a show, telling me that I made her feel like a horrible person. She swore to me that she would never abandon her religion or her husband like that. She begged for my forgiveness, making herself out to be the victim, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong for even questioning her. And then, 3 days later, I found out she was having sex with my boyfriend in my bed. The place that was supposed to be mine, that was supposed to be sacred, where I felt safe. She had violated that, and there was no going back. I knew I had the power to ruin everything for her, and part of me wanted to do it right then and there. I wanted to march up to her husband's family and tell them everything. I wanted to watch as her carefully constructed life crumbled around her. But I also knew I had to be smart about it. I needed time to figure things out, to make sure that when I made my move, it would be final. There would be no coming back for her. She would lose everything, and she would have no one to blame but herself. I didn't know when the right time to expose her would be. She was going back to her home country next month on a trip her husband paid for, and I knew he would leave her there if he found out. But my partner would know it was me who outed her, and he'd leave the house. I couldn't afford to live there by myself until next year. So I thought maybe I should wait until I could afford the house alone, even if that meant waiting nearly a year. One night I bumped into her husband at the gym. She wasn't with him, so I decided it was time to tell him everything. He admitted that he had a feeling she was cheating, but didn't want to believe it. He was even convinced they could work things out, until I showed him the screenshots I had. I also told him about her plan to divorce him once she got her citizenship. He was devastated and heartbroken. He asked me for some time to gather his own evidence, like finding the sex toys my partner had bought her, so he could build a stronger case when he went to the officials. He also asked if I could report it anonymously, as he wasn't ready to confront the situation himself. He wasn't angry, just unbelievably sad, and I felt awful for doing this to him. He didn't deserve to be used in this way. This wasn't how I expected things to unfold, but he promised to protect me from any fallout. He appreciated that I had risked a lot for him, especially since there was always the chance he might side with her, leaving me exposed. If they divorced amicably, she would be forced to leave the country in 60 days, and if she was charged with lying for the visa, she could be banned from the country for 10 years. I wasn't sure if cheating counted as lying for immigration purposes, but I didn't have enough evidence to prove it yet. In the next 30 days, everything changed. Her husband decided he could try to save their marriage, which was what I had somewhat expected. He had no idea she had several plans in place to run away with my partner. I had reported the situation anonymously, but I probably won't hear anything back. I assume it will all come up once they begin the divorce proceedings. During that time, my partner and I were still living together. Things were unbearable. We'd have moments of calm, and then we'd be screaming at each other over the smallest things. The final straw for me was about a week ago. I had been driving him to and from work because his car had broken down. One day he asked me to take him to the gym, and when I also got dressed to go, he told me I couldn't come because she would be there, and apparently I made her uncomfortable. I told him I wouldn't change my plans for her benefit, and he called me cruel and horrible for not supporting their love. He said I deserved to be unhappy. I laughed in his face, threw him out of my car, drove home, packed all his belongings, and dropped them off at his mother's house. By dropped, I mean I threw his things out of the car, called his mom, and told her to get them off the street before they got stolen. Then, after stewing over it for a bit, I drove to the other woman's house. I told her entire family everything. Her father-in-law was probably the angriest of them all. I showed them all the evidence I had and even gave them copies. She and her husband tried to play it off as some kind of fun couple sex game, but I had enough proof to show that wasn't true. Even if it were, she was very aware of my existence and knew my partner was in a relationship with me. During all of this, her husband found out that she had already been in contact with lawyers about divorcing him but staying in the country. Now, they have started the divorce process, and she is returning to her home country. She even blocked my partner on everything because he wasn't supposed to keep her nudes and sexts. My partner had lied to her too. She thought that after I found out about the cheating, he had moved out and gone no contact with me. Anytime she saw us together at the gym, he explained it away as coincidence. Now he's blocked on everything and is living with his mom. I returned his car to the dealership and accepted their payment plan for breaking the lease early. It's been a waiting game, and I won't lie, it's been exhausting. I'm currently waiting to hear back about this cute one-bedroom apartment that's just 10 minutes away from where I live now. It's smaller, but I think that's what I need. Something simple, something just for me. It's also $400 cheaper, which is a huge relief. Money's been tight with everything going on, and the thought of saving that much each month brings a bit of comfort, a bit of hope. It even has a little garden, which I know my dogs will love. Honestly, they've been my rock through all of this. Every time I felt like giving up, they were there, wagging their tails, looking at me like I was their whole world. It was enough to remind me that I still had love in my life. Pure, unconditional love. I'll lose my deposit on the current house, and I'll owe money for the damage he caused. The holes in the walls from the arguments that got out of control, the broken furniture from when I threw his things, the stains on the carpet where I spilled wine while crying alone in the dark, all of it feels like a scar from this relationship. But honestly, I don't care anymore. The money, the deposit, the material things, they're just things. What matters is that I'm getting out. I'm starting over, and that's worth more to me than any deposit. I still remember the day I went to see the apartment. The landlord showed me around, and as I walked through the small rooms, I could almost feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The kitchen was tiny, just big enough for one person, but that was perfect. The bedroom had a window that overlooked the garden, and I could already imagine myself waking up there, sunlight streaming in, my dogs playing outside. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of hope. I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could get better. I try to stay focused on that feeling, because if I let myself think too much about everything that's happened, it becomes overwhelming. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, it all comes rushing back, and it takes everything in me not to let it drown me. Some nights, it still does. Some nights I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and the tears come, unbidden. I think about the life I thought I would have, the future I thought I was building, and I mourn for it. I mourn for the person I was before all of this, the person who trusted, who loved without hesitation, who believed in the goodness of the people around her. But I also think about the person I'm becoming. I'm stronger now, even if it doesn't always feel that way. I've learned that I can stand on my own, that I can survive even the worst kind of pain. I've learned that I deserve better, that I deserve someone who will choose me, who will love me without conditions, without someone else on the side. I deserve someone who sees me as enough, just as I am. And until I find that person, I know I'll be okay on my own. The thought of being alone used to terrify me. I used to think that I needed someone to be complete, that I needed a partner to be happy. But now, I'm learning to find happiness in myself. I'm learning to find joy in the little things, like the thought of that garden, the thought of waking up in a place that's mine, a place where I can heal and grow, a place where I can start over. I know the road ahead won't be easy. There will be days when the loneliness feels unbearable, days when I miss him despite everything he did, days when I wonder if I made the right choice. But I also know that those days will pass. I know that with time, the pain will fade, and I will be left with something stronger, something better. I've been reaching out to friends more, trying to rebuild the connections that I let slip during the years I was with him. It's hard sometimes to explain why I disappeared, why I let myself become so isolated. But the people who truly care about me understand. They've welcomed me back with open arms, and I'm so grateful for that. I realize now how much I need those friendships, how much I need people who love me for who I am, without conditions, without lies. I've also started therapy. It was something I resisted for a long time. I thought I could handle everything on my own, that I didn't need help. But I was wrong. I do need help, and that's okay. My therapist has been helping me work through the pain, helping me understand why I stayed as long as I did, why I was willing to forgive him even after everything he did. It's been hard, facing those truths about myself, but it's also been freeing. I'm learning to forgive myself, to let go of the shame and the guilt. I'm learning that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve any of this. The other day, I drove by the house I used to share with him. I don't know why. I guess part of me wanted closure. I parked across the street and just sat there for a while, looking at the place that had been my home for so many years. I thought about all the memories we made there, the good times, the laughter, the love that I thought was real. And then I thought about all the lies, all the nights I spent crying, all the times I felt alone even when he was right there next to me. I realized, sitting there, that it wasn't really a home. It was a place where I lost myself, where I gave up pieces of who I was to try to make someone else happy. And I knew, in that moment, that I didn't need to go back. I didn't need anything from that place. I had everything I needed within myself. I started the car and drove away, and I didn't look back. Now, I'm just waiting to hear about the new apartment. I'm hopeful, and that's something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. It's a small word, but it carries so much weight. It's what keeps me going, what gets me out of bed in the morning, what makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, things are going to be okay. It's what makes me believe that I can build a new life for myself, one that's full of love and joy and peace, one where I don't have to share the person I love, one where I am enough just as I am. I had done everything I could to expose the lies and deceit that had shattered my life. I told the other woman's husband the truth, showed him the evidence, and watched as the house of cards began to crumble. I even managed to find myself a new apartment, a fresh start, a place where I could finally be free from the suffocating weight of my old life. But as I lay in my new bed, staring at the ceiling in the darkness, I realized that the emptiness was still there. The pain hadn't gone away, it had only changed shape. Day after day, the anger festered inside me. I had thought that exposing the affair would bring me peace, but it hadn't. It had only made me realize how much I had lost, my sense of security, my trust, my belief in love. I had been robbed of everything that made me feel whole, and now all that was left was the hollow ache of betrayal. And that hollow ache grew darker, became something else, something more sinister. It was no longer just pain, it was rage. I found myself stalking them online, my ex, the other woman, even my former friends who had drifted away when everything fell apart. I watched them live their lives, pretending to be happy, pretending that nothing had happened. It made my blood boil. How could they move on so easily while I was stuck in this endless cycle of pain and regret? How could they laugh and smile while I lay awake at night, unable to escape the darkness that had swallowed me whole? It was during one of those sleepless nights that I made a decision. A dark, irreversible decision. If I couldn't find peace, then neither could they. I wasn't going to let them get away with what they had done. I was going to make sure they paid for every tear I had shed, every sleepless night, every moment of anguish they had caused me. I started small. I created fake profiles, sending anonymous messages to the other woman's husband, planting seeds of doubt, whispering half-truths and lies. I made sure he knew that his wife had been planning to leave him all along, that she had been using him for the visa, that she had laughed behind his back with her lover. The messages were relentless, each one designed to chip away at whatever hope he had left of salvaging his marriage. But that wasn't enough. The anger still simmered beneath the surface, demanding more, demanding retribution. I knew I had to escalate my plan. I contacted the immigration authorities, pretending to be a concerned neighbor. I reported the visa fraud, providing all the evidence I had collected, the messages, the hotel bookings, the lies. I knew that if the authorities pursued it, the other woman would be deported, banned from returning for at least 10 years. It was a harsh punishment, but in my mind, it was justified. She had destroyed my life, and now it was her turn to lose everything. But even that wasn't enough. The darkness inside me craved more. It craved the destruction of my ex. He had been the one to betray me, the one who had shattered my heart, and I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. I began to dig into his life, looking for anything I could use against him. I found out where he worked, who his colleagues were, and I started spreading rumors. Anonymous emails to his boss, accusing him of misconduct, of inappropriate behavior. I wanted to ruin his career, to take away the one thing he had left. I even considered taking it further, hiring someone to break into his apartment, to leave behind subtle but unnerving traces of my presence, to let him know that I was still there, that I was watching, that I could reach him whenever I wanted. I wanted him to feel the same sense of violation, the same sense of helplessness that I had felt when I discovered his betrayal. I wanted him to know that there was no escape, that no matter how far he ran, I would always be there, haunting him like the ghost of the love he had destroyed. And slowly, it began to work. The other woman's husband filed for divorce, and she was forced to leave the country. My ex lost his job, his reputation tarnished by the rumors that I had carefully planted. They were both unraveling, just as I had. They were losing everything, just as I had. And for a moment, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I had done it. I had made them pay. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the satisfaction began to fade. The darkness, the emptiness, it was still there. No matter how much I destroyed their lives, it didn't bring back what I had lost. It didn't make me feel whole again. It didn't erase the pain. I started to wonder if maybe I had gone too far. But at the same time, there was a part of me that relished it, a part of me that enjoyed the power I held over them. I had always been the one who was hurt, the one who was left behind, but now I was the one in control. I was the one pulling the strings, and there was something intoxicating about that. It was like a drug. Every time I saw another piece of their lives fall apart, I felt a rush, a high that made me forget, even if just for a moment, the emptiness that still lingered inside me. One night, I stood in my small garden, looking up at the stars. The weight of everything I had done pressed down on me, and for the first time, I wondered if I had gone too far. I had wanted revenge, but what had it cost me? I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone consumed by hatred and anger. I had become the very darkness I had once fought against. And in that moment, I realized the truth. There was no peace to be found in revenge. There was no healing in destruction. I had burned everything to the ground, and now I was left standing in the ashes, alone. I sank to my knees in the grass, tears streaming down my face. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I welcomed it. It was the only thing that made me feel alive. I had spent so long trying to make them suffer, trying to make them feel my pain, that I had forgotten how to live. I had forgotten how to move on, how to let go. And as I knelt there, beneath the vast, indifferent sky, I finally allowed myself to grieve. Not for them, not for what I had lost, but for myself, for the person I had been, for the person I had become. I wept for the love I had given, the trust I had placed, the hope I had once had. And in that grief, I found a sliver of something I hadn't felt in a long time: acceptance. Maybe I would never be whole again. Maybe the scars would always be there, a reminder of what I had been through. But maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to live with them. To move forward, not with anger, but with the quiet strength of someone who had survived. The stars above me flickered, distant and cold, but they were there. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope. Not for revenge, not for justice, but for myself. For a future that was mine, and mine alone. But even as I stood there, a part of me knew that the darkness would always be with me. It had become a part of who I was, and maybe that was the price I had to pay. Maybe there was no escaping it, no running from the shadow that had grown inside me. I had embraced it, fed it, let it consume me, and now it was a part of me. And maybe that was okay. Maybe I could find a way to live with that too. Because in the end, we are all made up of light and darkness, of hope and despair, of love and hatred. And maybe the only way to truly live is to accept all of it, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly. To embrace the scars, the pain, the darkness, and to find a way to keep moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. And so, as I stood there in the darkness, I made a promise to myself, not to forget, not to forgive, but to keep going. To find a way to live, even with the darkness. To find a way to be whole, even if I was forever changed. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.